Bob Rich is a noted businessman, an avid outdoorsman, and the author of 5 books, all of which I've read, by the way, and I suggest you do the same. They include Catching Big Fish, Why We Fish, The Right Angle. You can see there's a theme there. His novel, Looking Through Water, was awarded a gold medal by Reader's Favorite in the category of Southern Fiction, and has been made into a film now streaming on Amazon and Apple, among other platforms. Bob will be in conversation with Paul Dixon, who moonlights as my husband. I have to warn you that Bob and Paul began calling each other Otto and Alfred, for, of course, Otto Preminger and Alfred Hitchcock, when they began working together on the film version of Bob's novel, Looking Through Water, as executive producer and associate producer. So don't be surprised if they slip into character. The rest of us just have to put up with these two guys who amuse each other no end. Paul, I'd like to say, is widely regarded as a pioneer in sight fishing for striped bass in the Northeast, a technique that combines precision and artistry. He is sometimes referred to as the Mick Jagger of saltwater fly fishing. We're still trying to figure that one out. His guiding career spans decades and includes adventures in the Florida Keys and international destinations such as the Seychelles, Belize, and Wales. So thank you both for coming. And Paul, do you want to take it away?
Thank you, dear. Appreciate that. Could I have my...
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Ellen.
Oh, what? Oh, sorry. Oh, right, okay.
Thanks so much, Ellen. So Bob, or should I say Otto?
Yes, you're Alfred, right? We'll talk about that in a while.
Yeah. So you're the successful businessman from Buffalo, which has 2 feet of snow in New York. And
you just answered the question what I'm doing here. The only place in the Keys where you don't want to get the hook.
Yeah, exactly.
You get that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, so what brought you to the Keys? And, were you riding when you were in Buffalo?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me, and Ellen, thanks for your nice words, and hi to everybody from this wonderful island. My wife Mindy, who's in the back, and I were in the search of our perfect island, and we had moved down to Isla Morada, and we decided it was time to spend a little less time in Buffalo, New York, and we made a list like some of you may have, and we started going around looking at islands, and we had a short list, and we wanted to be near the United States, and we wanted it to be somewhere where people speak English, and where the natives are friendly, and where they have a good airport. And all of a sudden we looked around in the words of that bird and eye thing from up in Maine, don't you move a muscle. We had found our perfect island right here in the Florida Keys. It had all the things we were looking for, and plus, of course, good fishing. And that's how we landed here.
So did you, was that where you began your writing, and was down here in the Keys, did it inspire you some? Or?
Yeah, I had always been fascinated with the way words came together, and I took every English course I could in college, mainly to avoid the science courses. And by the way, I have a lot of professors who were very surprised that I could read a book, let alone write a book. But most of them are gone now. And so as I moved out of the day-to-day of a business, it gave me more time to write. And one of the beauties of the Florida Keys, the folklore, the legends, the stories, really write themselves if you open your mind, and that was what happened for me. I went to breakfast with my wife one day at Bob's Buns, and there was a woman there, and she was talking about something called the South Florida Hall of Fame. That was a fishing award that no one had ever won. and I heard Fishing Hall of Fame. Hello, Fishing Hall of Fame, and you had to catch 10 fish using different tackle. And I thought to myself, there's a challenge and a book which could have one chapter on each of the fish. And so that really was an opportunity to write and to fish at the same time. And I chronicled that in a book which is now, was my first book, and it's in its second edition. And it's now called Catching Big Fish. And I tell all the secrets. And by the way, the fun of that is that most of those big fish that had to be caught in Florida are all swimming around these waters, and a lot of your fishing guides know where they're at.
So, Looking Through Water is your first novel. So was it an idea? Was it, did you start with an outline, or did you just start writing?
Well, I think my first couple of books were nonfiction. And the problem with writing nonfiction, for those of you who have done some writing in the audience, is that everybody who reads it turns into a fact checker. and all of a sudden you're getting inundated that, no, that was the wrong year, or no, I was wearing a blue shirt, not a red shirt. I mean, and you say, thank you very much. But what you really want to say is, tell someone who cares. And I felt like I was a reporter for the newspaper. Not that there's anything with reporters, but it just took away a lot of the fun. But writing a novel gives you a chance to create your own world, to start with a blank sheet of paper or a chart and create your own world where the fact checkers can't say you made a mistake, because it's your world that you're creating. And so it also gave me a chance, Paul, to write about things that I enjoyed, like fishing, the business world, to be able to have a book that started in New York on Wall Street and migrated down to the Florida Keys. And it gave me a chance to talk about families, a family business, families falling apart, coming back together, a love story involved too, and an adventure story. Not a fishing book, not any more than River Runs Through It was a fishing book. River Runs Through It, by the way, came out 36 years ago. So, by the way, Brad Pitt looks pretty good, doesn't he? It's a crime. So this kind of takes off where this movie takes off where that left off. And it's, and by the way, when A River Runs Through It came out, it increased the industry of fly fishing 60% in the first year. When the movie came out the book was written in 1989. It went to the big screen in 1992. That year, fly fishing sales increased 60%. The next year, they increased 60% a year or two. There were a lot of things happening, I think, Paul, that helped that. One of the main things, it wasn't just women ogling Brad Pitt. It was the fact that the growth in fly fishing, now this is where I lose half of the audience. The growth in fly fishing is coming from women. Fly fishing is gender neutral. The women can outfish the men. They can be every bit as good, and they can be better. And if you ask the guys in the room who are fishing the guides why that is, he'll tell you it's because women listen. The guys, I can do that, don't tell me what. The women listen and they fish better. Anyway, that's how that's how the movie came about.
So tell everybody how the movie came about through the book, and because the book, I remember Ellen interviewing you when it first came out. What was that? 12, 13,
15.
15.
Well, Paul, I think a lot of, I'm sorry, Alfred. I think a lot of people write and they have a dream that their movie is going to, or their book is going to be snapped up and made into a movie. And it doesn't happen a lot because there are a lot of books out there and there are a lot of movies, and it costs a lot of money for somebody to back something and take the chances. And it was something we hoped for, and a couple people actually talked about it in 1915, or 2015, I'm sorry. But I didn't really think about it. And one day I was at work and someone called and they said, "Is this about Rich? I'm an agent for someone who's interested in turning your book, Looking Through Water, into a movie." And I said, "Paul, I'm busy." I got friends that's, their sense of humor.
Big jokers.
Yeah, right. And I said, "Come on, I'm busy." And they said, "Excuse me." They said, "No, really, we serious? We'd like to turn your book into a movie." And I said, "Yeah, sure. Who's the actor?" And they said, "Well, it's Michael Douglas." And they said, "Is your book available?" And I said, "Well, I am speaking with someone else at the time, but I'll have my agent get back to you." And I hung up and I called a friend of mine. I said, "Quick, you're my agent. Call this guy and see what he said." And that's how it all started. And it turned out that Michael read the book and was looking for a movie that he could make with his son. And he liked Looking Through Water because it's a father-son kind of story, which is a very interesting relationship, by the way, which is a very sensitive and interesting relationship that literature doesn't handle a lot of times. So that's how the movie came about.
So maybe we should take a little trailer and then we can talk about some of the stuff.
Well, I want to talk about one of the actors first. We shot this. This was filmed. It was to be filmed in Isla Morada. The action was set for Isla Morada, but it's a period piece, and it was to be done in This was supposed to be 1982. It would have been very tough to make Isla Morada look like 1982. So it was shot in Belize, and we got down there, and it would have been really nice, but nobody down there had ever fished before, as far as the film crew. And they were holding the rods upside down, and and I said, "This is not going to fly with my fishing friends," like Brendan McCarthy, who would never let me forget it. So I got on the phone. I said, "Dixon, fast, get down here. We need to teach these guys how to fly fish." And because we had to make it authentic, it's not just it's not just a fishing movie, but we got a lot of really mouthy friends who tell their non-fishing friends that don't go to the movie. And by the way, the producers said, "Do you want to be in the movie?" And I said no. And Paul Dixon said yes. And that's why, like Alfred Hitchcock, who was always in his movies, had a cameo piece, right, Chip?
Yep.
So too does Paul Dixon have a role. And he became an associate producer in lieu of being paid, which I later found out.
So who is your favorite actor there, Bob?
Well, I guess I'd start at the top with Michael Douglas, and you see an actor and it's funny, you don't really know about him. And it's great to meet someone and know if you want to still cheer for him, if you like him or not. And I would just say about Michael Douglas, he was just exactly what you want him to be. He had a very strong, domineering father. He went through his paces dealing with his father, followed him into the family business, and he actually, Michael got his first Oscar when his dad gave up One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because the producer said that his father was too old to play the lead, and they gave the lead to Jack Nicholson. So Michael was so upset, he said, "Here, son, you produce this." And Michael did, and he won an Oscar. And that was, and then he went for another 20 or so years before he got another Oscar in Fatal Attraction, which, believe it or not, in 1989, he did Fatal Attraction and Wall Street in the same year. So he's a busy guy, but he set a great example for the cast. He would be on time, he was professional, and he just was as generous with his time and bringing the young people along. David Morse, another guy, playing the role of the father, quick study, learned to, when he got the part of the father, he went to Central Park in New York and got fly casting lessons from the Orvis shop. And he was bound and determined not to use a stunt double to do his casting, as opposed to some other movie that I don't want to mention, of course, was starring Brad Pitt and others. But I think a lot of the credit goes Paul and his team, and we kid with Brendan McCarthy, who's here, but Brendan came down, and these guys really taught the people down there how we talk on the boat, what we say. Like, one of the big lessons was when you catch a bonefish, you're with your guide, you don't stroke the fish and say, "Oh golly, that's really nice. Oh golly, that's a nice bonefish." That's not the way we talk. And so we did get authenticity, and I think Brendan will agree. And when you see the shots of sharks and tarpons and whatever, it was a lot of fun. It's hard work on a boat too, Paul. Shooting on the land, if you forgot your wrench, you go to the shop and get a wrench. But when you're out in the water and you forgot the wrench, heads will fly, right?
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I found, amazing after spending a month there, number one, it was hot as Hades. And, but it's how hard the crew works, but how hard a movie is to make. And that was the time consuming. We would get up at, maybe early to make first light. Bob was always on the set. He would love to, even though to the chagrin of the directors, like, him again. but Bob, we wanted to, be in the process. And the realization is actually really how hard it is, and especially shooting a film on water and using fish and trying to make things look right and everything else. Would you agree that?
Yeah, and I went down the first weekend just to see it come together, and I know full well the natural was shot in Buffalo, and I know what happens in the 5 worst words in life of a movie production group is writer on the set. Because they say, "Oh God, here it is," and they say, "Well, the writer's not gonna like what we've done to his work and whatever." And this was funny getting down there, because these guys realized when they got out there that they were lost as far as what you do and what you say. It wasn't so much teaching, not only teaching how to fly fish, but but poling a boat, have you ever tried to pole? Who here has poled a boat? Anybody?
Brendan McCarthy.
Oh, you never. Well, it's difficult, and just to talk like we do on the, which is probably lucky that you don't hear that, but so by the time we were there, they wanted us to stay in, and Belize is a wonderful country. If you all get a chance, don't go there in August. It was 100 degrees every day that we woke up. It was
Yeah, it was tough. It was, and the interesting thing was, is the whole crew was all dressed in black, and it was like, wow, is there something to this? Dressing in black, and they were out in the sun all day. It was pretty brutal. But the one of the things that we really brought the crew down for and everything else was because we had all fished these redbone tournaments in the past, and so to get the real action and how it worked, they do a shotgun start and all the boats take off at the same time, and but the producers in the beginning, the director thought, okay, we'll just, putter out and in a real tournament, and Brendan and I had just fished in a tournament at least for the 3 years previously, you're yelling at each other, you're going down, and so it's really the camaraderie and getting the cast, and Cameron Douglas, who plays the guide in it, who is, Michael Douglas's son and everything. He had to, to learn to pole and how to be a guide. The other Michael Stahl David, and the other, the young McKay, he basically, was the one that couldn't fish, didn't know anything, So it was interesting seeing the camaraderie and trying to get everybody excited to make the action. Wouldn't you agree on that? That was the main.
Yeah, I think it was a lot more difficult. That water scene. I mean, we had scenes where we had to just think about having a guy who doesn't know how to fish catch a tarpon and have a shark chasing the tarpon and have the guy falling into the water with the shark coming at and say, fine, that's what we're going to shoot today. And through the wonders of, and we used literally no animation. And I'm really happy to say, too, that no fish were harmed or killed during the filming of the movie. And happier to say that no actors were harmed during the filming. And happier still that no writers were killed. Although they were tempted.
So, you wrote in the book and everything the love interest and part of that is the woman in it is actually the best fly fisherman. And what do you think about, where there's always been women in fly fishing. One of the greatest of all time was Joan Wolfe. But was there, were you, the woman character and how you brought that out, was that a thought that I've got to have some women in this? I want to have I guess the interesting thing was she was the best fisherman.
Yeah, well, that's a long story that starts out a little earthy, but my editor was saying to me, he said, you write pretty well, but you don't do women well. And I said, what? Like, what do you mean I don't do women well? He said, I'm talking about writing. Oh, okay. But he said, your women aren't very strong. You've got to strengthen women, And he said, let me remind you that 85%, get this, 85% of the books that are purchased in America are bought by women. 85%. That's true statistic. So you want to start working on that. And I said, well, I went to a boys' school, an all-men's college. He said, no excuses, you got to write stronger. So I've been really working on that, and it wasn't by happenstance that we had some very strong women in the movie, and some stronger women coming up in some of my future things that I'm working on as well. But it's really true. Women have really carved a great place, in the world of fishing, and they're very important in the future of the sport too.
So,
How are we doing on time? I know there's some people who write, and maybe Ellen, I don't know if we have time.
You can keep asking questions or take some from the audience.
I was going to say if somebody maybe wants to.
Okay, I'll take the microphone or how do we do this? How do we pass around the microphone?
I've heard this is not a shy crowd when it comes to questions. Who's got that first, your nastiest, meanest, toughest questions, and Paul will take all questions.
there's one way in the back.
Could you name for us the 10 fish that are part of the...
Yes. Paul, could you? No, I'll try. Well, first of all, the fish were really hard because you had to catch by size too. Like you had to catch a 10-pound bonefish and a 100-pound tarpon on fly. You had to catch, then a permit was spin and a barracuda on spin, and they all had sizes, of course. There was a wahoo, a marlin, either blue or blue, white, or black marlin. The one that was really unique that they threw in was a bass. And to catch bass, you had to go to the mainland, and we went up to the crocodile-infested flamingo area, where my guide consoled me. He said, well, we're surrounded. I thought that we were logs floating, and my 5th-generation conch guide, Rusty, get this, Everett Russell Albury, 3 great conch names. Everett Russell Albury, the 5th or whatever, he said, well, I've heard that those are all alligators, but he said, don't worry. They say if they're smaller than you, they'll leave you alone, and if they're bigger than you, they'll eat you. So anyway, we caught a bass. How many was that? Did I get? Oh, and a dolphin. And a big dolphin. Did I say permit?
Didn't they have snook redfish?
Snook? No, not a snook. A snook, no redfish. And then it turned into a cobia when we couldn't keep large snook in captivity. I think I got them all. Be nice. No, be nice. Yes.
Hi, Bob.
Hi there, Brenda.
Thank you so much, you guys. This is really illuminating. And having you generously invited me to work on this down there, and it was so much fun. What I never really got to ask you or talk to you about was your relationship with your father and your sons. And I mean, it was so steeped in, so many generations, and it's so important to anyone, but especially, me as a father, me as a son, and all that. So I wondered, how that came
Yeah, this wasn't autobiographical at all, because I had a great relationship with my dad. We fished together, and it was kind of a generational thing. I remember when I got into fishing, and my father was a golfer, and so he was always a little cross that I became a fisherman. I'm kind of a recovering golfer, I guess, and they'd say in addiction terms. But he could never understand how we would release fish, because his generation, you'd catch them and cook them, or release them in a frying pan. But he did have a golf course that was loaded with big largemouth bass on West Palm Beach, so we got along great. But you do use, when you write, you write about things you know, and I had a lot of friends who had family relationships that were tortured that led to this. Very interesting, by the way, any of you who have ever watched the Disney series on Percy Jackson in the Olympiads, you might have noticed that Walker Scobell, who plays the grandson, is the star of Percy Jackson. He was discovered by Disney, and it was really charming. The scene that he's in is Michael Jackson, or Michael Douglas's grandson, was shot in a couple of lakes up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts area, and just a charming young man. Please.
Well, you reminded me of this group that I've heard about a lot and I never actually joined, but I'd still like to meet them, and now I'd like to meet them even more. And they're called Sisters on the Fly. Have you heard of them?
No, but I think we have the founder of the Bonefish Bonnies here, so.
Well, Sisters on the Fly is a group of women that now most people can join. Most of them have trailers that they pull around, and they travel all over the place and just have a good time together. But you reminded me that that group first came together because they were all fly fishing. So I wondered if you have ever heard them.
I haven't.
Sisters on the Fly.
I haven't, but it's great. And I notice, I think in Islamorada anyway, we see a lot of women going out and coming down as groups
I'd really like to do that.
and fishing and leaving the hubbies at home.
It sounds like a book.
You can easily find them.
Yeah, that's great, thanks. Please.
So everybody wants to know about fishing in the movie, but I really want to know about the writing. So I'm a little in awe that you run a company and write books. So how do you find the time and do the balance? Were you always writing, or was it something you put on the shelf and started later?
Well, I think, not looking for the easy way out, but I probably should start with a confession that I always considered myself more of a storyteller than a book writer, and that helps with your research if you're remembering stories as opposed to doing hardcore research. But I think with the travel I've been doing, I always have done, the internet makes research a lot easier. And you choose your time when you can. I'm always in awe of writers who always say, 7 o'clock in the morning until 10 is my writing time, and don't interrupt him. Everybody says, leave him or her alone. I never did that. I just, when I had time, I wrote. And I would also keep a pad, and if I had ideas in the middle of the night, I would write them down. I'm also a believer in journaling, and I've always talked to our children about journaling. You can't call it keeping a diary anymore because I think that's old-fashioned. So now you call it journaling, and that sounds good. So, but I think once you start writing, the stories seem to come back. We all worry about our memory as we get older, but I think that writing is a great way to bring your memory back to, and it's a comfortable and happy way to reach back and keep your memory, your memory in shape too. I don't know if that answers your question.
I'll ask it a different way. Is it easier or harder in the business?
Oh boy. It depends on which is going well at the time.
Well played.
No, each has its time. I think each has its season. But it's certainly, I think at times they're both good getaways for you.
Can you talk about the process of turning your book into a
script? Like, were you happy with how that happened? How did it happen?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's back up and, you might start at the beginning. One of the first things that happens, going back to that phone call, the publisher who called took an option on the book. That's usually the way it would go. The publisher will take an option on the book to reserve the right to publish for, say, 3 months, 4 months. We were fortunate in Michael Douglas coming on, and we were champing at the bit, and we knew that based on his history, a wonderful history. By the way, I asked him why he has had so many great movies, and I thought he'd say, oh, it's team and I've got great people and whatever. He said, I read every single script that comes my way, every one. Whether I get it in the grocery store, I didn't know he went to the grocery store. Or, whoever, he reads it all. And so so he really reads his own script. So it starts with an option, and then then they sign on the screenplay writer usually, and then they write it, and then they'll show that to the hopefully before the contract is finished. I think the best thing to do for a writer of a book, once they've brought on the screenplay writers, which the publisher did, is to stay out of their way. Now, if you're one of the New York Times best-selling list of writers, you have a little more latitude than if you're a broken down fisherman from Isla Mirada. And so, but I remember having a talk with one of the screenplay writers when they showed me the final version, and they took out some wonderful dialogue that I worked on for weeks on it, getting this one thing, and I read the final, and I'm going through this thing, and then, the script's only like 110 pages. I can't find it. And the stuff I worked in was really great. And I called it, and I said, can we talk? And they said, sure. And I said, where is that book? The brothers are talking, and they talk about life, and it's gone. And he said, look, you've proved that you can write a good book. And it's selling well. People are loving it. It's still around. It's not like writing a movie. We know how to write a movie that will inure to the benefit of your book. If you just let us alone, let us do what we do best, and let us do our job. You understand? And I went, okay. Chicken of the sea. But I think that's really true. It is a different medium, and it just, what works on the page doesn't necessarily, or probably doesn't work on the movie screen. I think we've over one more.
Next book?
Pardon me?
Your next book?
Yeah, I'm working on a thing about a book on happiness, and it's a novel. It was kind of a self-help thing, and it's going to be reissued as a novel. And it's about a guy who goes through a COVID thing where he loses his employment. But before he takes the next step, he wants to define this thing of what makes you happy, before you start throwing yourself in. It's under the understanding that we have two things in life. We have money and we have time, and as you get older, the time becomes more important than the first. So this guy, realizing that, wants to really discover what happiness is all about before he jumps into the next life, and that book will be out in September. And then we're working on a thing about kind of a historical novel of the 14th century, which is too far over my skis to.
You'll recognize the name Nancy. You did the, your women fly fishing group, so that's the hint. But, Bob, you also were talking about doing, other things and forming a production company and a fund. And so what's your future, going to bring us here? You got, besides the
Yeah,
book?
I'm glad you brought that up. We've had so much fun with this one. Everybody, and credit Paul with this one, everybody was going to the movie festivals, and they were going to Cannes, and they're going to Sundance and whatever else. And Paul came up with an idea, there's a lot of artsy, craftsy, nothing wrong with it, movies vying for time. And Paul said, why don't we introduce this movie at ICAST, which is the biggest place you've ever seen. It's a convention center for fishing, and up in Orlando.
Yeah, it was in Orlando.
And we went up there and enlisted all of the people from Sims Clothing and all of the fly rod. We got them all backing the movie and carving out a little bit of their production budget to help us promote the movie. And we had all of these people and just got to see the movie. And we've had a lot of people come up to us who've said, we'd like to, you guys are having so much fun with this, you and Alfred, that we would like to get involved with some outdoor movies and, skiing or surfing or whatever else. And so we're working on we have some people from the industry, and we're working on setting up a fund that can look at more outdoor kind of movies that will, for men and women, that'll be able to look at these kind of scripts and offer kind of healthy alternatives and get people off the couch to take a look at movies. So that's what's in the works. I want to thank you all again for being here. I think you're very fortunate to have this wonderful facility on your perfect island. That your Monday night series has got to be a great series and a great way to get over the weekend and get a fresh start on the weekend. I hope we haven't imposed on too much of your time.